The Silent Revolution. Dr. Elena Santos watched the quantum consciousness matrix pulse with a soft blue glow, its crystalline structure reflecting patterns that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. 20 years of work, conducted in secret beneath the watchful eyes of their alien overseers, had led to this moment. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity's greatest achievement had come about because of their forced isolation. The galactic Concordat had arrived in 2157, not with the thunderous invasion humanity had always feared, but with clipboard-wielding bureaucrats and a declaration that Earth was too primitive to join galactic society. They established observation posts in orbit, restricted human space travel beyond Mars, and essentially turned Earth into a cosmic wildlife preserve. Final calibration complete, announced Dr. James Chen, Elena's research partner and husband. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, adjusting parameters that would have seemed like magic to their grandparents' generation. The quantum field is stable. Elena nodded, her dark eyes fixed on the readouts. Begin consciousness transfer sequence. In the chamber before them, suspended in a field of quantum energy, floated their volunteer, Sarah Martinez, a brilliant physicist who had helped design the very system they were about to test. Her body was motionless, but her mind was about to attempt something unprecedented. The observation posts above had never detected their work because they weren't looking for it. The Concordat species all followed similar technological paths: faster than light travel, energy weapons, artificial gravity. None had ever considered consciousness itself as a technology to be engineered. Transfer initiating, James announced. The blue glow intensified, and for a moment, Sarah's body seemed to flicker, as if existing in multiple states simultaneously. Quantum coherence achieved, beginning neural pattern distribution. This was the moment that would either validate their entire approach or send them back to the drawing board. Humanity had spent their isolation not building bigger guns or faster ships, but understanding the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. They had discovered that awareness wasn't bound to physical neurons. It could exist as patterns in quantum fields, transferable, expandable, and potentially immortal. The monitors showed Sarah's consciousness expanding through the quantum field, her thoughts and memories maintaining coherence, even as they existed across a space larger than the lab itself. Then came the true test: connection. One by one, the volunteer observers seated around the lab gasped or jerked in their chairs as Sarah's consciousness touched theirs. Not invasively, but like a gentle knock at a door, offering connection rather than demanding it. "It's beautiful," whispered Maria Patel, one of the observers. "I can feel her presence, but it's not overwhelming. It's like having a new sense I never knew I needed." Elena exchanged a look with James. This was what they had hoped for, not just consciousness transfer, but consciousness sharing. A technology that could bridge minds without erasing individuality, that could create understanding without forcing conformity. The Concordat had quarantined Earth because they feared human aggression, human unpredictability. They never imagined that isolation would push humanity to transcend the very boundaries of individual consciousness. Beginning retraction sequence, James announced after they had gathered sufficient data. The blue glow dimmed gradually as Sarah's consciousness reintegrated with her physical form. When her eyes opened, they held a depth that hadn't been there before. "Did you see?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you feel it? We're not just sharing thoughts or memories. We're sharing understanding, perspective, empathy itself." Elena helped Sarah sit up, steadying her as she readjusted to the limitations of physical form. "How do you feel?" "Changed," Sarah replied, "but not lost. It's like I've learned a new language, but instead of words, it's a language of experience itself." The implications were staggering. While the Concordat species fought wars over misunderstandings and cultural differences, humanity had developed a way to share not just information, but context, emotion, and perspective. They had created technology that could end conflicts before they began by allowing genuine understanding between different minds. But they couldn't reveal it yet. The timing had to be perfect. Begin compiling the data. Elena instructed her team. We need to document everything. When the Concordat finally discovers what we've achieved, they need to understand that this isn't a weapon. It's an invitation. As the team worked, Elena found herself gazing through the lab's reinforced windows at the distant observation posts twinkling in the night sky. The aliens up there thought they were watching over a potentially dangerous species, keeping them safely contained until they matured enough for galactic society. In reality, they were witnessing something unprecedented. A species that had turned isolation into innovation, fear into enlightenment. Humanity hadn't spent their quarantine developing better ways to fight. They had developed better ways to understand. How long do you think we can keep this hidden? James asked, joining her at the window. Elena smiled. Not long. But we don't need to. The next time one of their observation teams does a deep scan, they'll detect the quantum consciousness signatures. They'll come to investigate, expecting to find weapons research. Instead, they'll find an invitation to evolution itself. In the lab behind them, the quantum consciousness matrix continued to pulse softly, its light a beacon of hope not just for humanity, but for a galaxy that had yet to learn that the greatest revolutions don't come from conquest, but from connection. The silent revolution had begun, and when it finally revealed itself, the galaxy would never be the same. Minds without borders. The Concordat observation post's alert klaxons blared for the first time in 15 years. Inspector Zixtel's crystalline sensory arrays vibrated with agitation as quantum signatures, unlike anything in the Concordat's database, emanated from the quarantine planet below. Impossible, they chittered to their subordinates. These readings suggest consciousness-level quantum manipulation. The humans are barely past primitive fusion power. But the data didn't lie. Something unprecedented was happening on Earth. Before Zixtel could compose their report to Concordat Command, a priority transmission cut through all channels. The Arctians, one of the Concordat's founding species, were facing extinction. A neural plague had emerged on their homeworld, one that corrupted the crystalline matrices that served as Arxian brains. Millions had already been lost, their consciousness dissolving into chaos. In the quantum consciousness lab beneath Mount Fuji, Elena Santos received the news with a mixture of concern and recognition. The universe had just handed them their moment. The neural plague affecting the Arctians, she explained to the Emergency Council of Earth's leaders. It's attacking their consciousness at the quantum level. Our technology isn't just compatible with their biology. It might be their only hope. The debate was fierce but brief. After 2 decades of isolation, humanity had a choice: remain hidden and safe, or risk everything to save a species that had helped quarantine them. They chose to act. When the emergency transmission reached the Concordat observation post, Inspector Zixtel almost dismissed it as a primitive attempt at communication. But the quantum signatures in the transmission matched the anomalous readings they detected. The humans weren't just reaching out. They were demonstrating mastery of technologies the Concordat had never imagined possible. Within hours, the first Arctian scientists arrived at Earth, their crystalline bodies humming with desperate hope. They found not the primitive savages they expected, but a species that had transformed isolation into enlightenment. The quantum consciousness matrix allows us to create a protected space, Elena explained to the Arxian delegation, their crystalline forms refracting the blue light of the quantum field. We can transfer the affected Arxian consciousness into this space while we purge the plague from their physical forms. But more importantly, we can teach you to do this yourselves. The Arctians were desperate enough to try anything, but what happened next exceeded everyone's expectations. As the first infected Arctian's consciousness entered the quantum field, something remarkable occurred. The human observers connected to the field didn't just see the Arctians' thoughts, they understood them at a fundamental level. Species that had evolved on different worlds, with entirely different neural architectures, achieved perfect communication. This is beyond consciousness transfer. The lead Arxian scientist communicated through the field, their thoughts translating perfectly into human understanding. This is evolution itself. The process began immediately. Teams of human and Arxian scientists working in perfect synchronization, their minds linked through the quantum field. Each infected Arxian was carefully transferred into the protective quantum space, their consciousness preserved while their physical forms were cleansed of the plague. But it wasn't just a medical procedure. Each transfer created understanding between species that centuries of traditional diplomacy could never achieve. Humans experienced the crystal song thoughts of the Arxians, while Arxians felt the electrochemical dance of human consciousness. Barriers of biology and culture melted away in the quantum field. The Concordat's observation posts reported unprecedented activity as ships from across the galaxy arrived at Earth, not with weapons or demands, but with desperate hope. The news had spread. Humanity had achieved something impossible. We quarantined them because we feared their aggression, Zixtol reported to Concordat Command. In doing so, we pushed them to transcend aggression itself. They've developed technology that doesn't just preserve consciousness, it bridges it across species barriers. The implications were spreading faster than the Concordat could control. As more Arxians were saved, more species came to understand that humanity's gift wasn't just a medical procedure. It was a fundamental reimagining of what consciousness itself could be. In the quantum lab, Alina watched as human and alien minds worked together in harmony that should have been impossible. We spent our isolation learning to understand ourselves, she told James as they monitored another successful transfer. Now we can help others do the same. But not everyone in the galaxy welcomed this revolution. As news of humanity's breakthrough spread, some members of the Concordat began to view Earth with even greater fear than before. A species that could bridge minds, that could transcend the very barriers of consciousness. What else were they capable of? As the Arxian plague was gradually conquered, Alina knew that humanity's real challenges were just beginning. They had proven themselves far more advanced than the Concordat had imagined, but in a way that defied traditional power structures. They hadn't built better weapons or faster ships. They had discovered a way to make such things obsolete. The quantum consciousness matrix pulsed with combined human and Arxian thoughts, a testament to what was possible when isolation bred innovation rather than fear. But in the darker corners of the galaxy, forces were gathering that saw humanity's gift not as salvation, but as a threat to the very order of things. The silent revolution had become a shout that echoed across the stars, and not everyone welcomed its sound. The bridge makers. In the quantum-shielded chambers of Concordat Prime, the emergency council session had lasted for 3 standard cycles. Representatives from 1,000 worlds argued about the implications of humanity's breakthrough, their voices rising in a cacophony of languages and emotions that their universal translators struggled to convey. They must be contained, thundered Ambassador Krell of the militant systems, his armor plates clicking in agitation. A species that can bridge minds is a threat to galactic security. What's to prevent them from turning this technology into a weapon? High Elder Crystalline, the newly recovered Arxian representative, shifted her crystalline form to project disapproval. They saved our species when they had every reason to let us perish. My people experienced their minds directly. There is no deception there, no hidden agenda. In the observation gallery, Alina Santos and James Chen watched the proceedings with carefully neutral expressions. They were the first humans ever allowed in Concordat Prime, present only because their expertise was deemed essential. The quantum consciousness technology had spread far beyond Earth now, with healing centers established on dozens of worlds. They fear what they don't understand, James whispered to Alina, just as they did when they first quarantined Earth. Alina nodded slightly. Fear or understanding? That's always been the choice, hasn't it? Below them, the debate raged on. The success of the consciousness-bridging technology had created 2 distinct factions within the Concordat. The progressives, led by the Arxians, advocated for full integration of humanity into galactic society and widespread adoption of their technology. The traditionalists, led by the militant systems, demanded stricter controls and limitations. But the reality was already outpacing politics. Across the galaxy, species that had never truly understood each other were discovering the possibility of genuine connection. The quantum consciousness technology wasn't just saving lives, it was transforming how different species perceived each other. "We have reports," announced Ambassador Krell, "of unauthorized consciousness bridging centers appearing in the Outer Rim territories. This technology is spreading beyond our control." "Perhaps control is not what we should seek," came a new voice. All eyes turned to Zixtal, the former inspector who had first detected humanity's quantum signatures. "I have studied human history extensively. When we quarantined them, we expected them to turn inward, to become bitter and hostile. Instead, they developed technology that transcends the very barriers we created." The chamber fell silent as Zixtal approached the central podium, their crystalline form resonating with conviction. "I request permission to share something with the Council." They gestured, and a small quantum consciousness matrix, built to human specifications, hummed to life. "This is dangerous," Krell protested, but curiosity had already gripped the chamber. One by one, Council members experienced direct consciousness connection. Not the full immersion of the healing centers, but enough to understand. They felt the echo of human thoughts, the depth of human empathy, the endless creativity that isolation had forced them to develop. "This is what we feared?" asked a Voraxian elder, their multiple eyes wide with wonder. "This is what we sought to contain." In the gallery, Alina and James watched as understanding spread through the council chamber. It wasn't just the technology itself that was revolutionary, it was what it represented. Humanity had developed something that made traditional power structures obsolete. How could you maintain boundaries between species when consciousness itself could be shared? But even as acceptance grew in the council chamber, urgent reports were arriving from the edges of Concordat space. Strange quantum signatures, unlike anything seen before, were appearing in the void between galaxies. Something was coming. Something that existed in a way that defied conventional understanding. Elena felt a chill as she read the preliminary data. The quantum signatures showed patterns that suggested consciousness, but unlike anything humanity or the Concordat had encountered. It was vast, alien, and it was approaching. "We need to prepare," she told James, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Whatever's coming, it's going to test everything we've learned about consciousness itself." In the chamber below, the council continued to debate, unaware that events were about to force their hand. Humanity's revolution had unleashed changes that couldn't be contained by politics or treaties. The ability to bridge minds across species had fundamentally altered the galaxy's social fabric. And now, as an unknown consciousness approached from the depths of space, the true test of humanity's innovation was about to begin. They had learned to bridge minds between species, but could they bridge the gap to something truly alien? The quantum matrices throughout Concordat space pulsed with shared thoughts and emotions, a network of understanding that grew stronger each day. Yet in the darkness between stars, another kind of consciousness was stirring, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the nature of awareness itself. The bridge makers had succeeded in connecting the known species of the galaxy. Soon, they would discover if those bridges could extend to the unknown. Echoes of fear. The quantum signatures from deep space grew stronger with each passing day. In observation posts across the galaxy, sensors designed to detect consciousness patterns sent back readings that defied analysis. Whatever was approaching wasn't just conscious, it was consciousness on a scale that dwarfed anything in known space. Alina Santos stood in the newly established Quantum Command Center on Concordat Prime, watching as holographic displays showed the entity's approach. Around her, representatives from dozens of species worked in perfect harmony, their minds linked through the quantum consciousness network that had once been Earth's closely guarded secret. "It's not just big," James said, studying the latest data. "It's organized. These consciousness patterns show structure we've never seen before. It's like a civilization that evolved as pure consciousness. Alina finished. No physical form at all. The revelation sent ripples through the quantum network. Across the galaxy, linked minds grappled with the implications. They had mastered the art of bridging consciousness between physical beings, but this was something else entirely. A form of existence they had barely imagined possible. First contact came without warning. Every quantum consciousness matrix in known space resonated simultaneously as the entity attempted communication. Those connected to the network experienced a moment of vertigo as alien thoughts brushed against their minds. Divergencetcted. Anomalous conscious patterns. Investigation required. The message wasn't in words or images, but in pure conceptual understanding. The entity had detected their quantum consciousness network and recognized it as something unexpected in this part of space. We need to respond, Alina announced to the assembled representatives. But not just with thoughts or emotions. We need to show them who we are, all of us. The plan came together quickly. Every consciousness bridge in known space would be linked simultaneously, creating a network of understanding that encompassed not just individuals but entire species. Humanity's gift had evolved beyond its origins, becoming something greater than even its creators had imagined. As the network hummed to life, Alina felt the presence of countless minds, human, Arxian, Voraxian, even the formerly hostile militant systems. Each brought their own perspective, their own understanding of existence. Together, they reached out to the approaching entity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entity's consciousness expanded, touching every mind in the network simultaneously. Images and concepts flooded through. Vast clouds of quantum energy forming networks of pure thought. Civilizations that had transcended physical form eons ago, and a mission to seek out and evaluate emerging consciousness throughout the universe. Evaluation begins. The entity began sifting through the combined memories and experiences of the linked species. It saw humanity's quarantine and their response to isolation. It witnessed their breakthrough in consciousness technology and how they had used it not for dominance, but for connection. It observed how their gift had transformed the galaxy, breaking down barriers that had existed for millennia. Then came the judgment. Evolution DTCTED. Physical beings, achieving consciousness harmony. This is NEU. Through the network, Alina felt the entity's surprise, perhaps the first surprise it had felt in eons of existence. The quantum civilization had encountered many species throughout the universe, but never one that had developed consciousness-bridging technology while still in physical form. Exchange of knowledge purposed. The offer was clear. The entity would share its understanding of consciousness itself, accumulated over millions of years of evolution, in exchange for studying how physical beings had achieved such harmony. In the Quantum Command Center, representatives from across the galaxy shared a moment of unified purpose. What had started as humanity's response to isolation had led them to this moment. First contact with a form of life they had never imagined possible. We accept, Alina transmitted through the network, her thoughts carried by the combined will of thousands of linked minds. The exchange began. The entity shared visions of consciousness existing as pure energy, flowing through the quantum fabric of space itself. In return, they shared the story of how necessity and isolation had driven humanity to discover the bridges between minds, and how that discovery had transformed their entire society. But as the exchange deepened, Alina sensed something else in the entity's vast consciousness. Loneliness. These beings had evolved beyond physical form, achieving what they thought was the pinnacle of existence, only to find themselves increasingly isolated from the physical universe they had left behind. They're not here to evaluate us, Alina realized, sharing her insight through the network. They're here because they detected something they thought was impossible. consciousness that bridges the physical and quantum realms simultaneously. The entity's response confirmed her understanding. They had discovered not just a new form of consciousness technology, but a path they had never considered, one that embraced both physical existence and quantum consciousness together. As the exchange continued, the galaxy's inhabitants began to understand that this wasn't an ending but a beginning. Humanity's gift hadn't just transformed their own society. It had opened a door to forms of existence they had never imagined possible. The quantum signatures that had caused such fear were becoming familiar now, integrated into the expanding consciousness network. What had approached as a potential threat had become something else entirely, a bridge to the next stage of evolution, one that preserved the best of both physical and quantum existence. In the command center, Elena watched as new patterns of light danced across the holographic displays, physical and quantum consciousness interweaving in ways that defied traditional understanding. They had not just made first contact with a new form of life, they had discovered a new path forward for all conscious beings. The fear of the unknown had transformed into the thrill of discovery, and the bridges humanity had built were extending far beyond anything they had initially imagined. Breaking chains. One standard year after first contact with the quantum entity, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The Great Chamber of Concordat Prime, once a place of political maneuvering and species rivalry, now hosted something unprecedented. A gathering of minds, both physical and quantum, linked in ways that transcended traditional understanding. Helena Santos stood at the center of it all, her consciousness simultaneously present in her physical form and extended through the vast network that now spanned known space. Beside her, James monitored the quantum matrices that had evolved far beyond their original design, now incorporating insights from the pure consciousness beings they had come to know as the Quantum Collective. Ready for the final integration? James asked, both through words and the deeper resonance of shared consciousness. Elena nodded, feeling the anticipation ripple through the network. What had begun as humanity's response to isolation was about to become something greater, a bridge not just between species, but between states of existence itself. The Quantum Collective had shared their greatest discovery. Consciousness could exist in a spectrum, from purely physical to purely quantum, with infinite variations between. Humanity's breakthrough had accidentally discovered the middle ground, creating technology that could traverse that entire spectrum. Initiating full spectrum integration, Elena announced, her thoughts carrying across the network to every corner of known space. The quantum matrices hummed to life, their familiar blue glow now shot through with patterns of energy that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. In orbit above every inhabited world, new structures crystallized into existence, consciousness integration centers that could support beings of any form, physical or quantum. Through the network, Elena felt the moment of transformation. Physical beings could now temporarily experience existence as pure consciousness, while the quantum beings could once again touch the physical realm they had left behind. But most importantly, they could all exist together, sharing understanding across the entire spectrum of consciousness. Ambassador Krell, once the strongest voice against human integration, now stood as a testament to change. His consciousness resonated through the network, his former fears transformed into understanding. "We quarantined humanity because we didn't understand them," he transmitted. "In doing so, we gave them the space to transcend our understanding entirely." The Arctians, their crystalline forms glowing with combined physical and quantum energy, shared their perspective through the network. Their near extinction had become the catalyst for change, pushing the galaxy to embrace possibilities they had never imagined. Even Zixtal, the inspector who had first detected humanity's quantum experiments, had evolved. Their consciousness now served as a bridge between traditional Concordat operations and the new quantum-integrated society emerging across space. But it was the latest discovery that truly showed how far they had come. The quantum consciousness technology, combined with insights from the collective, had revealed something extraordinary about spacetime itself. Consciousness wasn't just a phenomenon that existed within the universe. It was fundamental to its structure. "Show them," Elena transmitted to the network. The combined consciousness of billions of beings, both physical and quantum, focused on a single point in space-time. For a moment, reality itself seemed to flutter, revealing patterns of consciousness woven into its very fabric. They had discovered that the universe itself was conscious, in a way so vast and subtle that no single form of existence could perceive it alone. It took the combined perspectives of physical beings, quantum consciousness, and everything in between to even begin to understand it. This is why isolation never works, Elena shared through the network. The universe itself exists as a spectrum of consciousness. When we try to divide it, to categorize and separate its parts, we blind ourselves to its true nature. The chains of isolation, fear, and misunderstanding that had once bound humanity now lay broken, transformed into bridges of understanding that span not just space, but the nature of existence itself. What had started as a response to quarantine had become a key to unlocking the universe's deepest mysteries. In the Great Chamber, physical and quantum beings coexisted in harmony, sharing perspectives and experiences that would have seemed impossible just a year before. The Concordat had evolved from a governing body into a forum for unlimited exploration and understanding, its original purpose transcended by something far greater. "What next?" James asked, his consciousness resonating with curiosity that was shared instantly across the network. Elena's response carried through the quantum field, touching minds both physical and energy-based. "We keep building bridges. There are still corners of the universe we haven't explored, forms of consciousness we haven't encountered. Our isolation taught us to reach beyond barriers. Now we can use that knowledge to ensure no conscious being ever faces isolation again." The quantum matrices pulsed with combined purpose as the gathered beings, in all their diverse forms, embraced this new mission. Humanity had not just broken free from their own chains. They had discovered that true freedom came from breaking down the barriers between all forms of consciousness. Above them, the universe sparkled with newfound meaning, its conscious nature now visible to those who had learned to perceive it. The story that had begun with humanity's quarantine had become something far greater, a testament to the power of turning isolation into innovation, fear into understanding, and chains into bridges that spanned the very nature of existence itself. The revolution was complete, but the journey was just beginning. In the endless dance of physical and quantum consciousness, they had found not an ending, but an infinite series of new beginnings.